My name's Tim Abel, I'm a pianist and an arranger. So I began having piano lessons when I was about 8 years old, and I always wanted to be a professional musician, so I was lucky enough to get a place to study at the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester when I was 18. What my real focus was to be a classical pianist, so as I said, I went on to study the Royal Northern College of Music with a great Russian pianist, Dina Parakina. I studied there for 4 years as a solo pianist and then went on to study my postgraduate as an accompanist, actually. So I did a couple of years there and was eventually awarded a junior fellowship as an accompanist there. I worked extremely hard as an accompanist. It's a really demanding job, just hundreds of sheets of music on the piano every single day to learn violin sonatas, operas, marimba pieces, all this sort of thing. The workload is just really, really intense, and it kind of, after a while, it got a bit saturated, and I began to think about other ways of earning money as a pianist, something perhaps a little bit less stressful. And I'd always thought it would be quite fun to work on the cruise ships, you know, get to travel, get to see the world, play all sorts of styles of music. I did an audition in Canada, actually, with an agency. And they ended up putting me in the show band for the Queen Mary 2, going out of Southampton across to New York. So I did that for several years, and I actually worked my way up into being the musical director of a band on a ship. So that was another great skill set to have, to be able to conduct the shows, conducting a band, organising musicians, helping with rehearsals, scheduling things, that sort of thing. And then eventually, what I really had my eye on was to be a solo cabaret act. Yeah, they have these fly-on acts who come on for a week or so. They perform their own show in front of an audience of perhaps 1,000, 2,000 people. They have a lovely time, there's a guest status, and then they fly back home and get paid handsomely for it. So I thought, well, that's the gig for me. So I spent about a year putting together this show. Was lucky enough to get myself an agent, and yeah, about 2 or 3 years ago, that was my start of a new career, really, for me. I try and split my show into 4 different genres. Of course, classical, which is my main background, coming from music college, ragtime, boogie-woogie, and pop and rock. So those are the 4 main genres that I play in my show. I've also got to really think about the age groups and the nationalities of the people on board. So we've got a huge group, maybe 60–70% Canadians and Americans, maybe 20% Brits and Australians, and a few Europeans. So I've got to choose music that they are going to like. So the Americans are huge fans of rock and roll and jazz. The boogie-woogie and the ragtime, that sort of stuff really goes down with them. And I think of artists that I try and pick British artists because it goes with the whole storyline of me coming from England, and they think, oh, we've got this English performer here and he's going to play Coldplay and Queen and Ed Sheeran and this sort of thing. You have kids on board, so I'll do things from the movies, Harry Potter, Jurassic Parks and Disney medleys. We've also got people who still enjoy the classical music, so I'll maybe put things like Claire de Lune in, very light things, Rondo alla Turca. And then you've also got people who want something a bit more rocky, so I'll have some Journey, some Queen. So basically, you're more of an entertainer when you're doing your show, when you're on board. People don't want to be educated necessarily. They want to hear songs they know. They want to hear a variety of things. And of course, in between the pieces, I'll try and tell anecdotes and funny stories and that sort of thing. And the main thing is that they come away just having had a feel-good experience, listen to some tunes they know, watched a piano player who's hopefully impressed them, and they go to bed having had a fun evening, hopefully. Performing on a cruise ship on a cabaret stage with a band is very different to what I was used to before playing as a classical musician. I mean, as a classical musician, you're really just yourself and a piano, and perhaps if you're accompanying someone else, it's very pure, and there's not a huge amount of things that can go wrong as long as you practice. You know your part, the audience are well behaved, there's no sort of additional setup to worry about too much. But playing on a cruise ship is very different. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. For a start, you might be flying out somewhere like Australia. You're absolutely knackered from a long journey, and you get into your cabin. The cruise director will call you and say, well, Tim, you've got a show in 5 hours. You've got to be down in an hour's time for your rehearsal with the band, who have never seen your music before. You've never met them. And you have 90 minutes to rehearse a 45-minute show with them. And normally the band's very good, but occasionally, you might have a drummer who goes off and takes his own tempo or something, or you might have had drummers that have disappeared to be sick into a bucket in the middle of a show. You never know what's going to happen, and that's just one side of it. You get on stage, of course, and everything is mic'd up to the heavens. You've got lights all over the place. Sometimes you can barely see anything. You're having to play incredibly loud to play over the band. Sometimes I've got drums, guitar, bass, saxophones, trombones, everything like this. And so you're really having to work really hard to project yourself. You are mic'd up, but it's just, you're always playing full out, and I'm drenched in sweat at the end. But then you might have things that go wrong with the microphones, might cut out in the middle of things. I've had the captain give a nautical announcement in the middle of Rondo alla Turca. You've got the audience don't behave themselves. I've had fights in the audience. I've had people get up on stage trying to shake my hand in the middle of a performance, because you realise it's a free-for-all. They haven't paid specifically to come and watch you. They're on holiday, and they can walk in and out as they please. So they'll be talking and laughing sometimes at the bar in the middle of your show. Or I'll get heckled. I'll have people shouting out requests, and I say, well, I'm not a jukebox, am I? So it really is. You've got to be prepared for anything. So it's really it's on your edge of your seat sometimes. You just kind of sat there, but it's a great rewarding experience as well, and especially performing to the American audience, as they really make you feel like $1 million when you're on stage, because they'll just whoop and clap and cheer you just for saying your name. You can do anything, and they think you're God's gift. The travelling side of working on cruise ships is really the best thing, and can be the worst thing. Because, obviously I get to travel to these amazing destinations. I've been to Antarctica and the Amazon and Australia, the Caribbean, Alaska, all these sort of places. But you are also doing some extremely long journeys, and they can very easily go very wrong. The summer season's not so bad. Usually you're flying to Spain or Greece or Norway or something like that. But then in the winter months, most of the ships are going to be in South America, Antarctica, Australia. There's places where they've got rules that you would never have imagined. For example, I was in Japan last year, and I joined a ship, and I was supposed to join in Hiroshima, got on no problem. I was supposed to leave 5 days later in Tokyo, and I got to the gangway, I'd done my shows to fly home, and they stopped me at the gangway and they said, oh, you're not allowed to leave the ship. And I said, why not? And they said, because there's a rule called the cabotage law, which says you can't join a ship in Japan and leave a ship in Japan unless you've been to a different country in between. And of course, I hadn't been anywhere other than Japanese ports, so I had to stay on for an extra 10 days until the ship reached Busan in South Korea, until I was allowed to fly back home. And by that time, I'd missed several other gigs. I remember once a huge flight back from Tahiti, about 30 hours flying back to Manchester. I had about 12 hours back at home until I had to fly out to another ship in Uruguay. So, I got back home, head hit the pillow, straight out, back to the airport the following morning, another 25-hour out to Uruguay to join a ship in Montevideo. I got on the gangway, went to the reception desk, and they weren't even expecting me to come. So they flew me straight back home. So it was kind of within about 3 days, I'd done about 60 hours of flying or something ridiculous like that. But probably the best story I've got actually was when I had to fly out to a tiny island called Murray in New Caledonia, which is just kind of northeast of Australia. And I'd flown out there. I flew via the main island of New Caledonia, and I got on this tiny little jet, and I was speaking to a French doctor who was flying out there, and he said to me, what are you doing out here? And I said, oh, I'm joining a cruise ship in the morning. And he says, oh, well, where are you staying? And I said, oh, I booked just like this little villa online. And he said, all right, well, how are you going to get there? I said, I don't know, I'll just get a taxi or something. And he said, well, there aren't any taxis. I was really? He said, no, there's no taxis on here. There's no public transport or anything like that. So anyway, I got to this island, and it was this kind of tiny tribal place that I really hadn't researched and didn't know anything about. And luckily, this French doctor helped me out. He found one of the locals to drive me to this place that I'd booked online. And I arrived there, and they showed me to my accommodation. It was kind of like a teepee with a mattress on the floor and one light bulb. And I said, oh, they said, how are you going to pay for it? And I said, well, I've got my credit card. And they said, we don't accept credit card. And I said, well, where's the nearest ATM then? And he said, well, it's 8 miles away. And no one was offering me a lift. So I ended up having to walk 8 miles in about 35 degrees heat to get some cash out. And I didn't fancy walking back. So luckily I managed to hitch a lift back in a pig van with like sharing the back of a van with 2 pigs. And so I managed to get back with cash in hand, and I paid for the accommodation, and they said, oh, that's great. Well, would you like to eat dinner with us this evening? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. You know, I've got nothing else to eat, so okay. And there's nowhere else to go, no restaurants. So they said, oh, we'll give you a call at 7:30. So I was waiting in my teepee, just sat with nothing to do. And 7:30 came, and nothing was happening. I came out, and there was a group of lads just kind of sat drinking beer and strumming a guitar, you know, on the street outside. So I went up and joined them. They're very friendly, and they said, oh, come and join us, have a sing-song with us, you know. So I sat down, they gave me a beer, and, you know, we were singing these old French songs. And I said eventually, oh, I'm a bit hungry, you know. What's for dinner, you know? When are we having dinner? And one of the guys said, oh, you're hungry, are you? Oh, all right, okay. And he disappeared into the distance, and he came back a few minutes later with a shotgun. And he shot something out of a tree and took it off to the kitchen and put it in the pot. And I said, oh, what's that? And he said, oh, you'll see later. And he called me about 10, 15 minutes later. He said, oh, dinner's ready. And he'd cooked a big fruit bat that he'd shot out of a tree and cooked it with rice and pineapple. And so that was my first experience of eating on the island of Murray in New Caledonia. So yeah, experiences like that have really, you know, entertained me over the last few years. I just really feel like I've lived quite an interesting life.
Travels with Tim.